Thank you all for coming out and listening to our talks today, and hopefully you're getting something useful that you can use. I'm going to talk a little bit on field pea. I don't know that there's a lot of field pea producers out here, but if you are, or you know people that are, hopefully there's something interesting I can show you. This is looking at fall versus spring applications mostly for weed control in field pea. We did trials starting in 22 and 23, both. Repeated this trial. I'm going to talk about both of them. Both years we had a combination of Dalley brome and Japanese brome in these trials. It's weed that you see more in the western part of North Dakota, but it's something that we're always concerned about. We also looked at kochia, lamb's quarter, and I didn't include wild buckwheat, but we had that as well. In 2022, these were applied on October 20th. In 2023, we had trouble getting it out, and we kept on trying to, and didn't end up till middle of November. We had a nice couple of days that warmed up enough that we could get out there. In both cases, the peas were planted on May 1st, and treatments went out immediately afterwards. What we were looking at primarily is looking at Anthem Flex along with some other treatments comparison. All of our pre-emergence treatments were tanks mixed with glyphosate for helping to control weeds that were present. We also compared that to a spring application of Spartan Elite, and we had Fierce EZ applied in the fall at 3 different rates. Then we compared that just to glyphosate by itself applied in the fall or in the spring. So this is our 2023 result. I'm just going to show you brome and buckwheat in this case. From fall application of glyphosate, we had about 75% control of downy brome and Japanese brome combination. With the spring application, we got it up to about 90%. With all of our Anthem Flex treatments or our spring treatments, we bumped that up to 95 to 100% control of downy brome. For wild buckwheat, we didn't control anything with just glyphosate alone in the fall or spring, but a fall application of Anthem Flex, we got us about up to 80%. With spring application, it was about the same. I should take a second to remind everybody, in 2023, we had over 5 inches of rain in the couple of weeks after this application. So we had adequate moisture to get Anthem Flex into the soil. So in both cases, we got similar control of wild buckwheat. Our best control was with the Anthem Flex in the fall, followed by Spartan Charge in the springtime, where we got up to 90%, but most of them were very similar. And Fierce, we were in the same category, a little bit better with the 9 ounces of Fierce than the other treatments. This is our 2024. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide because it's too much data, but I'm separating it out. This is just looking at the brome itself. We did a little bit better controlling brome in this trial. We were up to almost 90% with fall glyphosate and 100% with spring. And most of our treatments got us in the mid-90s to 100% for downy brome. So very good downy brome control. For looking at, this is for kochia. We had a little bit of kochia that had emerged, and we got a little bit of control of kochia with the spring glyphosate, but fall Anthem Flex, we got 70, and we got a little bit better with the spring application. Again, I think this was partially due to controlling some that already had emerged. With our split application, I didn't talk about that very much, but we split Anthem Flex with 2.5 in the fall and 2 more ounces in the springtime. We're very similar to what we had in the spring by itself. Our best treatment was with just Spartan Elite in the springtime, where we got up to about 98% control. This is common lamb's quarters. Again, very similar what we saw with other. We got a little bit of control in the springtime. It had emerged. Anthoflex in the fall was about the same as spring glyphosate application. We did better with the spring glyphosate Anthoflex, and somewhere in the middle with the split. I think the spring did a little bit better just because we had quite a bit of emergence at time of application, where compared to 2023, we didn't have any weeds emerged at the time of when we planted the peas. This is looking at giant foxtail. We didn't get any control in a green foxtail. I said giant. I don't think we have giant foxtail around here. But green foxtail, it hadn't emerged yet in the spring at time of application. And we got, most of our treatments gave us in the mid 70s, a little bit better with Spartan Elite, where we got almost up to 90. But most of them were around 70 or a little bit less, but not great, but it did get some good suppression. Definitely would need to follow up with a post application of something in crop I would recommend, but not too bad. Looking at pea yield, one thing I want to point out is even though we had almost always the best weed control with Spartan Elite in the spring, because we had Downy brome in these trials, the spring application by itself cost us a lot in yield. And this was just because we had so much Downy brome in there, and that affected the yield throughout the season. It didn't recover from just not controlling it in the fall. And that's one of the things I want to emphasize. If you have Downy brome, a fall application is necessary. You're going to hurt yourself if you wait to spring. Even if you control 100% at planting and you control all your other weeds, you're going to cost yourself yield just by not controlling it in the fall. And this was seen again in 2024. Again, Spartan Elite was one of our best weed control. It was not one of our best yielding treatments. In fact, our best treatment was the Anthoflex split, where we put some out in the fall and some in the springtime. So definitely, if we want some of the things I want to point out from this trial is that Anthoflex did suppress a lot of weeds. With a fall application. I don't think it's something that you should use by itself. Putting a Spartan charge after it in the springtime really improved it. If you have Downy brome or Japanese brome, fall application is going to be critical. You need to control that in the fall time. Even if you're very successful in the spring, it's going to hurt you if you don't. I'm going to talk about a trial looking at post options for kochia control in spring wheat. Spring wheat was planted on May 1st in 2024 and emerged on May 14th. We had kochia that was averaging 2.2 inches, ranging from 0.5 to 3 inches. Good population of 131 per square meter. We also had wild buckwheat, just over 2 inches in average, 1 to 4 inches, and 84 per square meter, so a good population of that. These treatments were applied at 10 gallons per acre with a tractor mounted sprayer. This is our list of treatments. It's a pretty long list, but what I wanted to do is look at comparison with Starane Ultra with some other combinations, or fluroxapyr with other combinations. And with this case, I used bromoxynil using Maestro 2EC at using 4, 6, and 8 ounces AI of bromoxynil. And then we compared this we have quite a few premixes that have fluroxapyr and bromoxynil in them. Husky FX, Husky Complete, Talimap, Talinor, Tolvera. Carnivore, I looked at 2, 8, 16, and 24 ounces. Bison, which is just bromoxynil MCPA, and then knowing that's often kind of weak with kochia, looking at adding 1 or 2 ounces of Starane Ultra to that combination. So this is our weed control in kochia and wild buckwheat from that. I want to also say 2024, we started out with a lot of soil moisture. crops came up great, weeds came up great, but every month in our part of the state, unlike rest of North Dakota, we were at a deficit for rain. We didn't have a single month in the growing season where we had average. We were always below average. And by mid-June, we were already starting to see some drought stress happening. And with that, our weed control probably was a little bit less than what I would expect normally. So a lot of these treatments gave us mid-80s for kochia control, where I would expect closer up to 90, 95%. I think that was just because they were so stressed. One thing that I did notice is that, if you use fluroxypyr by itself, 72% control of kochia or 60% of buckwheat. Adding some bromoxynil, just 4 ounces brought us up to 81, but if we went up to 6 or 8, we were up to 92%. So definitely you need, if you're just going to use starine and bromoxynil, you need to go up to a higher rate. And that was true with wild buckwheat as well. As you increase the rate, you did better on the control. All of our premixes were in the mid 80s. They're all very similar. When we went up to a higher rate of carnivore, it kind of bumped up about 4%, but not really significantly different than any of the others as well. Bromoxynil plus MCPA, the bison treatment definitely benefited from adding some fluroxypyr to it. We did yield this trial. I don't show the yield data. We didn't have any differences in yield for many of these treatments. They were all similar. And I only show 14 days after. We looked at it a little bit later, and usually I try to do a pre-harvest rating, but we had dried out so much by then that there wasn't much to rate left. Everything had gotten pretty crispy. So we started out the season with a lot of soil moisture. Under those conditions, wheat's very competitive. And we didn't see any yield loss from having a little bit of kochia in there. But we still don't want to let a lot of weeds go to seed and build up that seed bank. So we need to do a good job of controlling it. We do have quite a few options out there for kochia control in wheat still. We can't rely just on fluroxypyr for kochia control, though. We need to add things to it that's going to improve that control. At least 2 modes of action, 3 is better. And again, 2024, we had droughty conditions. Our control would probably have been better under more ideal growing conditions. But when we have droughty conditions, you need to remember maybe to use the higher end of our labeled rates and maybe increase our spray volume to get better coverage so that you're doing a better job. I'm going to talk a little bit on a different subject, Canada thistle. I'm not going to take too long on this, but I talked to this one last year, but we repeated the trial and I want to compare our results. These were 2 different trials, one conducted in 2022, the other in 2023 in a field that was solid Canada thistle. And we evaluated it 35 days after treatment and then 1 year after treatment. These are the treatments I'm going to compare in here. We had Roundup Power Max at 16 and 24 ounces of active ingredient, up to 40 ounces product. We looked at Milestone, Toradon, 8 and 12 ounces of method, and Sterling Blue Dicamba at 32 ounces of product. So looking at 32 days after, everything looked pretty good. I mean, we were about 90% control with all of our treatments, maybe dicamba a little bit less in the 80s, but it looked really good. So both years. If we go to 1 year after treatment, we saw a lot of differences with Roundup by itself. In 23, we had about 35 and 60% in 24 for the lower rate, and even at 40 ounces, we were up to 70% in 2024. You might look at why did we do so much better in 2024 than 2023 is we had so much better growing conditions in the prior year that in in 2023, when we put out these treatments, that our control was so much better. So it was a lot drier in 2022 at the time of application than 2023. So a lot more uptake. With Milestone, we did better in 24 than 23, 85 versus 100, Toradon 95 versus 99, Method 95 versus 99, and Method 12 ounces, 100% both years, is most consistent. Even on the drier year, we did better with 12 ounces of Method. Dicamba was kind of disappointing, 55% control. It's not something that we recommend a lot. And just a reminder, even if it looks great, it doesn't have as long a term control as some of these other herbicides. A couple of slides, just looking at some pictures, but probably running short on time, but 3 minutes. So this is just Roundup. We killed all the grass, so what we get a lot of prickly lettuce and lamb's quarters and everything else coming in. With dicamba, you can still see some Canada thistle in there. We preserved our grass that's in there. And Method at 12 ounces, it still have the grass, but pretty clean otherwise. So this is what the field looked beforehand. So solid Canada thistle. So we did some good, but it's just something for to think of. We have a couple minutes, maybe a question if you have one. Brian was asking for controlling Downy brome versus kochia with Anthem Flex. What's the recommendation on timing? I would still say for field pea, a fall application Anthem Flex is probably going to be more consistent, just because in the springtime you don't always get the rainfall to incorporate it. In our cases, we did pretty well on rainfall, but that's not always reliable. And I think following Anthem Flex with something like Spartan Charge or something with sulfentrazone in it in the springtime, you get a combination and you're going to get a better all-around weed control with that combination anyway. So
what I was getting at is, okay, so in the fall you applied with Roundup, right?
Correct. Okay. Fall application with Roundup, yes.
Okay, so the Roundup is, for the most part, taking out
most of the brome.
Most of the brome, but then the Anthem Flex is helping quite a bit.
Yes.
So as long as you've got the Roundup in there, you could apply it any time.
Yes.
But if you're just going Anthem Flex, you'd have to get that Anthem Flex on way earlier.
Yes. Yeah, what Brian was saying, if we tank mix Anthem Flex with Roundup at our application, if we were trying to control Downy brome with just Anthem Flex, yeah, we would have had to apply it much earlier, and that's true. But I would never recommend using Anthem Flex just for controlling Downy brome by itself. It does make a big difference, though. We went from 75% up to nearly 100% control with a fall application when we put Anthem Flex in there. So we're definitely getting residual control, and because even at mid-October, not all the brome is emerged. So we definitely get good control of the Downy brome, Japanese brome, with that fall application. But definitely, I would recommend, if you're using Anthem Flex in the fall, to wait till the soil temperatures have dropped into the 40s, just so that you can get more residual carryover into the springtime.